All right, welcome back to the 2022 Virtual Residency Workshop. It's Thursday, June 30th. This is the early afternoon session. This is another perspectives panel, specifically the Cyberinfrastructure Organization Leaders' Perspectives. What do CI organizations need from their CI facilitators? Our moderator is Sandra Gessing, and so I'm going to turn the program over to Sandra. Sandra, go ahead.
Henry, thank you very much. Happy to be here and really looking forward to a nice panel discussion. So I will introduce in a moment the panelists, but also please from the audience, if you have questions, just directly, ask directly, and because we are giving always the audience the priority over questions we have prepared. So the questions are on the website and I will show them in the moment. I don't know. This. So I'm excited that we have three panelists. So Kevin Brand, Savani Shadalapaka, I hope I said that right, Kurt Hillegas, Himanshu Sharma, Jason Sims, and Lisa Snyder. And for the preparation of this panel, I asked them all to give us a little bit of a small blurb why they think what happens in the facilitator landscape, what happens with things at the university, and you can see the blurbs here. And so Kevin, for example, said our VP of IT and other university leadership continue to prioritize the need for CI facilitators, recognizing their integral to the success of fulfilling the research cyber infrastructure needs of institutional research and education. So this is a fantastic success story. Savannah said the university recognized the importance of computational infrastructure support that cyber infrastructure and research technology provides. Also great to hear. So Kurt said we roll research facilitation into a number of other roles, like help sessions, programming and workflow support, system administration, research software engineers. We find that the required approach varies broadly from division to division. So this is really also shows the broad landscape we have for facilitators. So Himanshu, the leadership at the University of Illinois at Chicago recognized the importance of CI facilitators and funded multiple new positions to expand capabilities and capacity in this area as compliance requirements and HPC, AI, cloud technology continue to evolve. And CI facilitators will play a critical role at UIC. And that's, I'm also at UIC at the institute, so I can really also see that. And Jason said, I would say that one mark of success we've had as a result of using a more explicit CI facilitation approach is that we have been able to attract and retain faculty who have research programs that we historically were unable to support effectively. So the faculty that normally, underserved minorities, we still have that in some groups, but that is great. And from Lisa, so at UCLA, we have a handful of research facilitators out in different units across campus. We also have a nascent research concierge program with an Office of Research and Creative Activities designed to onboard new research within the Office of Advanced Research Computing. We have teams of research consultants. So this is really shows really the broad landscape. And with this introduction and the different experiences from our panelists, I would like to start with the questions, if they are not directly questions from the audience. So you can raise your hand or put it in chat, or Okay, so I would give this question, the first one, to all panelists. So at your institution, what kinds of researcher-facing roles do you have, and what do these folks do? And I would just start with the order we had here. Kevin?
Hi, everyone. Kevin Brandt here from South Dakota State University. at South Dakota State University, we've got two positions that are devoted to research-facing roles here at the university. One is that of a domain specialist, and I put that more in the category of a science domain specialist. And the other one is a high-performance application and data specialist. In terms of what they do throughout the day, it does vary between the two different positions. One is a higher level position, the science domain specialist position. And the other one being application and data specialist. They're working more on a technical level with the researchers. And, myself, I also have a certain part of my role is research facing too. So, but anyhow, again, when I look at research facing roles and what we provide to the mission of SDSU is more of a interface in between research cyber infrastructure and the different science disciplines.
Thanks. Savani?
Hello, everybody. I am Sarvani Chalapaka from University of California, Merced. At UC Merced, we are a small team of 3 serving about 600 campus users, which is entire campus, and our team builds cyber infrastructure and mostly facilitating computational research. The CI resources that we support are 2 campus-wide HPC clusters, each about 2,000 cores, high-speed perimeter research network, wide area visualization environment. The 3-member team, we interact with researchers on different fronts. The sysadmin is mostly systems facing, however, consults with faculty regarding systems facing and software facing or research server co-location requests. The primarily researcher facing role is our researcher facilitator, and she teaches, trains, and educates users and provides direct support to all users on effective utilization of HPC. And as a director of CERT, I interact with researchers as they are our primary stakeholders in this role. It's the scope of interaction with researchers is mostly about informing policy.
Great, thanks. Kurt?
Hi, I'm Kurt Hilligus from Princeton University. We have a number of groups that do researcher-facing aspects of the roles. I don't think we have anyone whose role is fully researcher-facing, but the most researcher-facing group that we have is our researcher engagement group. In that group, we have visualization people, we have training people, we have system administrators, and we have programmers. And they do things such as answer our ticket queue, they run help sessions, and they engage directly with the researchers to help them to get that initial leg up into doing things. If we look at other researcher-facing pieces, when those issues become too big or too complex for the sysadmins who are in the researcher engagement group, we do actually have direct interaction from our sysadmins in our advanced systems and data storage group. We try to keep the interruptions to them as little as possible, but we do have situations where we need their interaction. And then we have a very large research software engineering group. And that group is, it's our researcher software engineers, researcher facing, are they facilitators, or are they actually researchers themselves? And so that's kind of a hybrid role where they've got a lot of different hats on, sometimes even the data facing hat.
Great, thanks. Himanshu?
Thank you. So at UIC, we have something similar to what others have mentioned. We have data scientists who are trying to help not just regular computationally intensive disciplines like physics, chemistry, but we try to focus on our humanities, social sciences. And then we have our computational scientists that are very domain specific. Research software engineer is a new skill set that UIC did not have until recently. We are planning to transition one of our existing staff member into that role. And that's already proving out to be very valuable at our institution, because we are learning that a lot of the research labs at UIC are developing their own softwares. And at times, someone developed that software 10 years ago, and no one knows what the heck is in the software. The next postdoc just comes in, runs the software, gets the result he needs, and all is happy with the world. And no one cares about the provenance, no one cares about the optimization, and the tech has changed. So we are finding a lot of traction in that area. I will also say at UIC, our engineers are also researcher facing, because especially when it comes to the cloud, a lot of service offerings are coming left and right. And a lot of the HPC work or secure enclave work for sensitive data set can now be done on cloud at UIC. But researchers don't always know how to set those things up cost effectively or even securely. So we are now trying to provide that architectural expertise where we don't have to build everything for you. We will teach you how you can build it for yourself. So our engineers are now beginning to play that researcher facing role too. That is something relatively new that we started to do. And I think cloud was a big trigger for us, because we learned that it's very easy to shoot yourself in the foot 10 times over with cloud. And that's why I think our group is proving to be a valuable resource. So now we have trainings coming up specifically to tell people how to use cloud or build solutions in cloud. So those are some roles that we have at UIC.
Great, thanks. Jason?
Hi, everybody. I would say if you look at the institutions represented on this panel, we're definitely the odd one out in some ways. We're a very small shop. We have an enrollment of about 2,800 and about 270 faculty, of course, a small percentage of which actually use our services. And we've only had an advanced cyber infrastructure, sort of ecosystem in place for about 3 years now. So we are fairly new. And of course, most of that time has been in COVID. So it probably hasn't been leveraged as much as we would like, although we've seen a lot of ramp up in the last year or so. So in terms of when it comes to this question, we're a shop of two. There's myself, who's sort of in the managerial role, and I kind of do most of the researcher facing kind of facilitation work, as well as budgeting and all that stuff. And then I have a sysadmin. So we kind of have to be jacks of all trades here. Whatever the researchers, users need, we have to either be able to help them directly with it, which is not always the case, but we have to be very good about helping them find resources where they can, find answers to the questions, or find a community of users who are kind of in similar situations that they are, whether it's with a specific piece of software or, trying to optimize a piece of code or something like that. We don't have the resources to tap discipline-specific folks or any sort of roles like that. It's really all on us. So we do best to try to deflect some of that off of us and try to get support from the broader community for our users.
Fantastic, thanks. Lisa?
Well, Jason, I think Sarvani and I represent the other end of the spectrum. We're from a massive research organization, and I will say through the UC system, we have been blessed with a lot of energy from Claire Mizumoto and others, including now Annalie, and they have really embraced the research facilitation movement and have put on regular workshops and tried to kind of really reinforce the need for that role within the UC system. At UCLA, we are blessed in many ways, but also challenged in many ways. We're very decentralized, so there are research facilitators or researcher facing roles across the campus in different units. Annalie has a few in HumTech, her group. The library is a great partner for us. At the Office of Advanced Research Computing, which is where I work, and a couple of my colleagues are on this call, we have a very large team dedicated to our high performance computing system, and they are interacting regularly with researchers on code, on jobs, on purchase equipment purchases and such. And we also have a significant number of staff that are focused on research consulting, so expertise across the board. We have teams on statistics, computational sciences, GIS and visualization, and web web design and hosting, and disabilities computing. So the challenge is getting all of those folks to play well together. We have a nascent research concierge program, which is very much focused on simply onboarding new research faculty to make sure that they get the resources they need to, jump into their new role at UCLA and be productive.
Great, thanks. So another question would be, what qualities and skills do you look for in a research computing facilitator? How do you balance the need for technical skills versus the need for professional interpersonal skills? And to mix up the order a little bit, that not be going always. So I would ask this first now to Lisa, just give directly.
Okay, sure. Actually, it's a great question for me because we do have facilitators versus consultants. For facilitators, I would say communication skills, communication skills, communication skills. They need to be organized. For me, the facilitators are almost the traffic cops of a research enterprise, right? They are directing researchers to resources, to services, to people, and they need to be able to communicate on a level that the researchers will respect. And they need to have a very clear understanding of what exists on the campus and what's available to which researchers, because not everything is. If it's a service that's in a very specific division or school, it might not be available to someone from another division or school. And so there are some challenges, but the facilitator question, communication, communication, communication.
Awesome, thanks. Kurt?
So I'll go along with what Lisa says. Communication is important. I also think that practiced skills are important. So you can't have someone just doing facilitation and have their technical skills deteriorate over time. They need to be connected with what the researchers are going to be doing, so they have that connection. The one thing, and I highlighted this in my comment that was on the previous slide, is that we find that the communication needs are very different between the disciplines. For a chemist or in astrophysics, yes is a perfect answer to a question, whereas a yes answer to a humanist might seem like a brush off, right? So it's really someone who can understand the audience and give the answer at the level that's going to be helpful and connect with the researcher they're working with.
Great, thanks. Himanshu?
So at UIC, we have seen recently a transition. We have added capacity to our team recently, just within the last, I think, 2 years. So 3 years ago, I was chuckling when Jason said we are a shop of 2 doing everything, and then Shravani saying shop of 3. I remember talking to Lisa when UIC was developing our strategic plan. And at that time, we were a team of 3. And as soon as I got off my call with Lisa, the third person gave a notice, and then we were a team of 2. And so we have now ramped up. We are a team of 10, and we are hoping to double in a year or so. But the skills have changed. So I think originally it was more about that traffic cop mentality, making sure that you are able to redirect resources because you don't have all the capacities. But as we are adding bench strength, we are now able to afford some experts in their field. But we put a strong focus on not hiring rock stars. That's our approach. We want to hire people who can work within a team, because science is very much a team-based sport. And if we are going to have people who personality-wise may be 20, but technically 80, we try to not have that. So we try to go hierarchy equal, but definitely more importance on the communication side. But as with more strength in the team, we can perhaps afford to have people who may be a little light on their interpersonal skills, but are great programmers. We are not there today.
Great, thanks. Lisa, you want to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to toss in a comment, and I got a question direct in the chat. Like, what is the difference for me between a facilitator and a consultant? And it sounds as if you all are kind of making hybrid positions, people who are facilitators, but also have subject area expertise. they can help with programming or they can help with statistics or something. I think I'm fortunate enough, our team is fortunate enough that we can have a little bit more of a split, that we do have people whose primary role is communication, getting the word out, making flyers, talking to, new researchers. And then we have people whose primary role is more about consultation, like they are a resource in the same way as our HPC system is.
Okay, thanks. Jason?
Yeah, I think for us, and by that I mean mostly me, I cannot have such a depth and breadth of disciplinary knowledge. I mean, there's no way that I can, fully understand the way that a physicist is going to do something, a biologist, an engineer, humanist, whatever the case may be. So I find for sure the communication elements are critical, and I consider myself lucky, and I think it helps me a bit to have a PhD because, when I talk to these folks who are often in that same boat, at least there's a shared framework of understanding about, the grant cycle, the publication cycle, the, tenure sort of world, all of these things that they face, which I think is something that, not many facilitators have. I think that that's a growing trend, which is good. But I'm really blessed to have that academic background that I can bring into this technical realm, which I think has really helped me be able to connect with a lot of our users and researchers and students, because I've been through a lot of those phases that they sort of deal with on a quotidian basis. So for us, it's really about the communication and understanding what it is that they're trying to accomplish, and then to help them map out what their needs are and where the resources are, whether they are on-prem locally, whether they're cloud-based, whether they're other user communities or whatever, that we can bring to bear to ensure that they have a successful and productive research program here.
Great, thanks. So there are also, commented in the chat. I think everyone can read them themselves. So, Savani?
So we are a resource constrained university, and it is not uncommon for staff at all levels to wear multiple hats and therefore need multiple skills. In that context, I am always looking for people that could serve a breadth of researchers across discipline. Most important quality that I look for is that they can translate between the science applications and how to use the associated research technology that the team provides and supports. I look for experience with computational infrastructure such as HPC, so they understand the pain points of a researcher, and only now they have more influence to change these pain points for the researcher. A research facilitator needs to understand the systems and softwares enough to provide technical solutions for to support that research. And communication, effectively communicating research needs to systems facing members of the team is important, and understanding how research enterprise works is important, and also understanding how IT works in a higher education system is important for somebody that is working as a part of a central IT team like we are.
Great, thank you. Kevin?
It's really interesting to hear the different approaches that people are taking. But for us, we do, I neglected to mention, we do have 3 systems facing people too. And, what qualities do I look at, skills, when I look at a research facilitator or anybody that works for me, I guess, is great in interpersonal skills. They've got to be able to work well as a team member on different projects, be able to, go along with the flows of that project. And then 2 is, then you'd kind of drill down to, okay, it depends on the position. Overall, they've got to have a good foundation in cyber research, cyber infrastructure. But, I found over the years, and my background is I actually came from enterprise IT, or managing the IT infrastructure for a little over 12 years. And so, I found out over the years that, you really need to have somebody, again, with great interpersonal skills, communication skills, wants to work, has initiative, and is ready to work. And on the research side, obviously working with the researchers. And again, even systems facing people, with us, because maybe we are just a little bit of thin in terms of support. A lot of our systems facing people have to work with researchers too, so they have to have those skills. The domain specialist, what I look for in a science domain specialist, just because we only have one, and we're a land grant, we've got everything from Department of Ag, Bio, all the way through engineering, and so you try to find somebody that has a broad background, and for my science domain specialist or our research facing facilitator, that position requires a doctorate degree. And so you hope and that you're going to get somebody that has a broad background. We're strong in the genomics, but we're also strong now, on the engineering side with a lot of work. So, but yeah, no, I think looking at that, I would say that one is if you can get somebody that works well with others and can communicate and interact with researchers and help them out and care and may lack a little bit in the technical abilities. I would rather take somebody that has, some technical deficiencies that we can maybe address over the long term, and get somebody that has a real people person, then get somebody that is very high level skilled, but lacks some of the people skill qualities. So I don't know if there's anything more to that question, Sandra, but
yes, it answers the question, because it's really, it shows that the, let's say, communication soft skills, which are also really a big topic for the virtual residency, is an important topic. It's
yes.
Really training the next generation of leaders in the space. So kudos to Henry and his program. So, and another question, I think I didn't overlook the question from the audience. So what sort of professional development opportunities do your research computing facilitators need, and how do you provide these? What do you prioritize for their professional development? So we heard already that a lot goes into the communication skills. So is that something also you provide training opportunities for? And I would give that directly back to Kevin.
Yeah, and great question. When I look at this, the different opportunities for professional development, and some of the things I mentioned before is having a good foundation in cyber infrastructure, and then too, also continually developing those people skills. I think being involved in events like this, like Henry has, and then also being involved with CARC, being involved with Campus Champions, and for us, we're part of the Great Plains Network. There's a number of different initiatives within GPN that'll help my people out in terms of professional development. There are times when with COVID, there was actually some more opportunities for us, because the budget does limit travel at times. And so really, with COVID, and we had a lot more participation of my group in these different events, be it PERC, be it and other events out there, and through internet too, and other great events. But and so for us, for the challenge for the future is, as these events go back to a little more of an on-site presence, which is great, is how do we make that work. And so we look towards maybe some grants and other opportunities, but in terms of prioritization for professional development, I think that really varies, we have some turnover like everybody else. And so I look at the person themselves and look at and talk with them about where they want to go in their career. I also have to look at what I need out of that position. And then we develop plans based almost per person, in terms of professional development. And it's not only that I want to be able to have them really produce well for the institution, but I want to also help them out in their career aspirations.
That sounds great. Thank you. So Jason, yeah, your situation with a 2-people team, that is probably really also difficult.
Yeah, I mean, it is, but we are blessed here at Lafayette in that we have we are strongly encouraged to seek out professional development opportunities, and we're lucky to have decent funding and organizational support towards those ends. And so we try to go where we can when we can. I mean, of course, during COVID, I think that's a caveat that we all have. There wasn't nearly as much of that, certainly of the in-person variety, as we would historically be used to. But now that things are opening up, we're going where we can, whether it's things like PERC, coming up next month or whatever. So pretty much so maybe this is something a little different than what some places do. Each year when we're creating our annual goals, we usually craft 3 goals, one of which is always explicitly defined as a professional development goal. So we will work with each other and with our supervisors and stuff like that to understand where there are either places we would like to develop or maybe some emerging deficiencies and things that we would like to address in our professional development, and then identify ways in which we can address those, whether it's through specific conferences or online trainings or workshops or certifications or whatever it may be. So we take a very proactive and explicit look, certainly annually at where we need to focus our professional development opportunities, and we try to address them that way.
Great, thanks. So Lisa, with your huge campus, how is it going?
Yeah, with our huge campus, I would say that professional development opportunities truly vary from employee to employee. Some want and are eager for professional, like technical skills. Others do want soft skills. I have one manager who's just begging for conflict negotiation skills, which doesn't say anything too nice about his team. But the biggest challenge that we've had with professional development is actually having everybody carve out time from their already incredibly busy workloads to go to a conference or to take a course online. We had a Pluralsight license. Most of you are probably familiar with Pluralsight. License for many years, a suite for anyone on the team if they wanted to jump on and take a class. And we saw very little uptake there. Some classes were not particularly professional, so everyone just kind of discounted them. And we eventually dumped our Pluralsight licenses, and Brian is looking at alternatives for that. One thing I will say we've done, and I really appreciate this, is in the time of COVID, we've had a monthly professional development meeting for everybody on staff to talk about things like communication and presentation skills and best practices for PowerPoint and how to set up Zoom lighting, which others are much better at it than I am, but trying to pull together the staff in a social way, but also in a professional development sort of way. And I think that's been very successful. But yeah, and another opportunity that we try to push is, of course, through our campus human resources, where they have quite a few classes in things like soft skills and leadership. And as much as we can, we steer people to those. But again, the challenge is carving out that time to take those courses.
Great, thanks. So Kurt?
So we encourage people to participate in national meetings and such as much as they can to create networks, to learn more about our field. But we also encourage people to undertake whatever technical development they need, whether that's self-study with Google and very informally to we support people taking classes as well to advance their technical skills. For the facilitators and for my whole group, actually, this year our focus is on EQ and emotional intelligence, and really focusing on bringing up those skills very specifically, and thinking about things like empathy and active listening. I mean, whenever I start with someone, the very first thing, if you can't do active listening, you can't do any of the other behavioral competencies very well. So start there, but we're going to bring in some outside training resources to work with our whole group to bring our EQ and emotional intelligence level up higher. And then I think you have to be ready with your staff to do individual things, to really identify places of growth. You see people in their careers hitting kind of a ceiling. And often that ceiling is because of, in the technical field, it's not because of a lack of technical skills. It's because of behavioral skills that they just need to pick up. So often we'll engage people in coaching. As we get higher in the level, we've sent a large number of people to the more training programs as well.
I really also like the personalized approach. That is, yeah, that sounds really awesome. So Savani, what is?
I negotiate for an annual staff professional development budget allocation by demonstrating not only the direct value these trainings bring to the university, but also the value of our team sharing knowledge with broader research computing communities. Professional development opportunities for a research facilitator would be to attend trainings such as carpentries, to learn skills about teaching technical tools to researchers, attending conference such as OU, Virtual Residency, UC Ref. One learns about science and art of research facilitation. Communities of practice such as Campus Champions, CARC, USRSC, they share a wealth of knowledge that the research facilitators can dip into. But like mentioned, like the other panelists mentioned before, professional development needs to also fulfill personal career ambitions of an individual. So it's important that these plans are made in collaboration with your research facilitator. For example, if there are opportunities for them to attend their domain specific conferences or expand their technical skills, then those need to be discussed, thought upon, and put into practice.
Great, thanks. So Himanshu, I will ask you the same question, but at the moment there's also a really interesting discussion and important discussion in the chat, and maybe you can also say something about diversity, equity, and inclusion training, part of the professional training. How is it prioritized?
Sure, happy to get into that. I want to also say Ben Kronheim, I also asked a question earlier about the data management. I think we want to highlight that question too after we respond to this one. I just don't want that to get lost. But at UIC, in addition to all that was mentioned, we are very fortunate that UFI system gives a significant tuition waiver discount to all the employees. So anyone who wants to do any master's degree or program, PhD, like myself, who is going through a PhD program right now, gets their 100% tuition waivers. And that's pretty incredible. That has allowed more than 50% of my team to either pursue a PhD or complete their master's or go through their bachelor's or second bachelor at UIC. So I think we are blessed because the institution provides that benefit. And other than that, I think anyone who has talked so far, we follow something similar. It's a collaboration with the with the individual. I will say in the beginning, I was when we had a smaller team, I always wanted to carve out time for people to go out. However, I learned that before COVID, many of the conferences did not have a virtual option. So many of the members with young families did not want to go out. And it almost felt bad for me to ask them forcefully to move away from family for a full week. So I'm also realizing that the professional development ask of our staff also changes as their own life progresses, as part of their personal journey too. And now the kids are a little older, they have more time. Now they are all gung-ho to go on those trainings. So in fact, they appreciated during COVID having more virtual conferences because they could now finally connect to their peers virtually, something that they couldn't do beforehand. So I just a flip side of virtual and hybrid meetings during COVID. And DEI, we do have a very diverse campus. I don't know about other campuses, but we are a minority serving institution. We are a Hispanic serving institution. And 60% of all of our students get financial aid, need-based financial aid at UIC. So it's a very diverse crowd. So DEI is almost like part of our mission. We try to do that in our teams as well. But I won't say we have made significant focused push on that. It's just that we happen to be in a very diverse city. We end up getting a very diverse pool of candidate and a very diverse staff and faculty that we serve. So it happens organically if you look at our mix. But I cannot say I personally or my team personally have given that a significant thought.
That is awesome. Thank you. And thank you for pointing me to Ben's question. So, so you put it, and that's already a little bit up. I really like that we have this lively chat. So this question is unrelated to the topic at hand, but I would be very interested to hear the panel thoughts on the data management question that was shown in the slide of questions shown earlier. Okay. Particularly as it relates to who owns data on a cluster, the user, the PI, the university. And let me look up the question about data management. It's also on the website. So let me see. Maybe Ben, you can also speak up which one of the questions it was. Does your institution have research data management policies and or practices? Is it that one you would like to have answers to? So that is the question 8.
I just pasted that question FYI in the chat. That I think that's the question Ben is referring to.
Yeah, that is the one, also the number 8 I did have a look at and I started to read. Yeah. So yeah, who's responsible for implementing your institution policies and or practices? How have these policies, practices positively impacted researcher need around research data? Anyone who wants to start with this one to give an answer?
I can actually leap in from the UC point of view. So UCLA and UC San Diego have both had kind of interim guidelines on ownership and access to research data. And both of those policies, nobody quote me on this, really were almost forced into existence when we had some really high profile researchers leave our respective campuses. And the UC system is now putting together an official policy on ownership and access to research data. And I will tell you that essentially the UC regents own everything. Just they own everything. People can have access to it if you are a PI or if you are involved or whatever, but the regents own everything. What's interesting in the new versions of the policy that are this close to being like official is that it pushes a lot of the responsibility for research data stewardship to the individual campuses and specifically to the equivalent of the Vice Chancellor for Research. For us, it's a Vice Chancellor for Research and Creative Activities. And they are responsible for making sure that the infrastructure and the intent of the policy are followed and data management practices are in place to address those. We all know that NIH is getting serious about data management and sharing plans, and that kicks in January. Right now, I think we've all been muddling along, and the researchers doing the best that they could under the requirements that as they understand them. And we're trying to kick in more training opportunities and educational campaigns to make sure that they're meeting all of those goals.
Great, thanks. So
I can hop in next. So at Princeton, we have a fairly new person. She joined just before, maybe a year before we all went out for the pandemic. Wynn Coles is in our library. Her current title is Director of Research, Data, and Open Scholarship. And my group has been working closely with her on, she's actually developing a research data management framework, which is trying to bring together all the policies at the university that might affect this. But we're also collaborating on a very large project called Tiger Data, which will be a research data management service that will provide not just the storage for the data, but builds kind of a network of research data managers across the university and reaching down all the way into the research groups to work on data management. And with ownership, we talk about the difference between ownership and stewardship. While the faculty members are here, they are the stewards of their data. But as soon as the PI leaves, then the university's ownership of that data takes over, and the stewardship needs to be moved to a different level, either the departmental level or something more central than that.
yeah, it's also a great solution. So anyone else would like to answer this question?
I will just do a +1 on saying that this has to be collaboration, at least within 3 units, VCR, libraries, and research computing. Vin Cole is a dear friend of mine, and I know the great work that she has been doing. We have at UIC, a data science librarian also, who has been leading the data management plan service for a while, because DMPs, as you may have been hearing, DMP plans are not new. That has been a requirement for a long time, that you have to provide data management plan in NSF and NIH grants. It has been in place for many years now. Has anyone been reading those? I don't think so, till this NIH policy is coming up and getting enforced. And now it is very serious. So now there is a higher level at the university, an issue about worrying about compliance, because we derive a lot of our funding, roughly 400 million, just from NIH. And we don't want to get into the wrong side of that by being in non-compliant, because we know that the policy is not going to hold the researcher accountable, but the institution. So all of a sudden, this is an institutional risk that an institution need to respond to. So I cannot say clearly who was the owner or steward till now, but January, you better believe it's going to be the institution because it's their neck on the line.
One challenge, to build on that point, one challenge is resting the data management and sharing plans and the institutional resources being used in any funded grant proposal, is wresting that information from our Office of Research and Administration. And we're still working on that, and to see if there's a way that we can free up that information about, funded projects to help us build data services, build infrastructure, and make a case for supporting our researchers.
For us in South Dakota, in terms of a formal data management policy, we don't have it, but we do have, in terms of data management plans, have made some efforts in that area too, obviously with grant proposals. But in terms of ownership, the Board of Regents owns all the research data. Of course, the data has to be made publicly available. And we do that. We've worked over the years with our library, and they've got a product that does, the researchers can submit that to, I think it's called BPress, submit their publications and actually some of their research data and upload it to that site. And but in terms of stewardship, it falls within the responsibility of the faculty. And again, when they're done, then that kind of shifts over to central IT. So, things that we need to work on more, and obviously is a data management policy. Something that's kind of somewhat related to that on the research side is we have a strong movement, as the other land grant institutes do, towards precision agriculture. And so right now we've got an initiative that's really focused on ag research data, all this different production data that's coming in from the fields. How do we secure it? How do we manage it? And two, the biggest thing is there too is the ownership, because it's potentially owner data. So like I said, we're just that's part of what we're talking about in the development of a comprehensive data management policy here.
Great, thanks. Savani, you also would like to add?
No, I understand, like Lisa said, the data ownership rests with the UC steward. So there are efforts on multiple fronts on the campus level and system-wide University of California level as to address these challenges on different fronts. How do we think about research data protection? How do we think about research data backup? So there are efforts brewing to basically support the figure out data management and solutions for some of these ongoing challenges that we have. Faculty, I also want to +1 on what Himanshu just said. This has to be a coordinated effort. It can't be a siloed effort without research computing involved, because we hold a lot of computational research data on the systems that we manage.
Absolutely. Jason, and aspects that wasn't discussed yet for the data management?
I got a quick quick question for those that are probably a little more decentralized. How do you handle your data management when, we've got that to a certain extent too. A lot of data management is sitting on external drives, sitting on computers, large hard drives and stuff. We're working on a project right now. It's a system project with the Board of Regents, is to classify research data. And I'm just wondering how, those that have to contend with a lot of decentralized HPC and data associated with that, how do you manage that data, or in terms of classify that data?
Okay.
The silence tells you that's a difficult question to answer.
Oh, I know. And it's probably a whole half hour in itself.
Oh, it's 4 hours in itself.
We've been working for 3 years to develop the Tiger Data Project, and that's what it's all about. Is how do we help the researchers to classify the data in ways that then it can automatically be moved to the right storage. It can be protected in the way it needs to be protected. All of those things can be done, and it's a huge issue, and we're hoping that this big project is going to create an environment at Princeton that's going to change the culture around data management, so that the culture really supports from the inception of an idea through archive. It supports the life cycle of data.
Mm-hmm.
We're right behind you with what we may call, I don't know, Bruin data. But the similar idea is some sort of centralized storage facility that auto-magically moves things to, cold storage. But we're light years behind you on that.
And I think someone asked the question around the relationship with CISO. So my answer to this question, I think, starts with our CISO. Our Chief Information Security Officer led a development of an IT security program at our campus. And one of the most critical component of any security program is data classification. So a lot of thought has gone in that program to classify all institutional data, including research data in different categories. It's a 200-page long plan. Perhaps no one has read it. It's hard to enforce. But we do have bare bone mechanism to classify data. But after that, I think it potentially just stops there. What our CISO has done, I think very creatively, they have something called Unit Information Security Officer, which are at the unit level in the colleges and in the department. And they have the responsibility to implement the security plan at the local level, because we centrally cannot manage it across 16 colleges that we have, around like 5,000 faculty members. So to be able to do that in a distributed manner, it's now driven in combination with CISO and the research computing. We just helped to develop the plan and delegated that responsibility to the local Unit Information Security Officer. Now we are trying to build a data storage finder, a popular platform I think that many of us use, that tries to marry the data classification scheme that UIC adopted, and then based on that tells users which different tools and options they may have available, but nothing to the extent that it automatically makes that decision for you. We are many years behind that.
Okay, thank you.
Certainly on the CISO front, the CISO is in so many meetings with me. And I think there's just one thing that I have to say is controlled unclassified information. It's going to broaden, and we're going to have controls on much more research data than has in the past. And so the CISO has to be in conversation about all of this.
I agree.
Absolutely. Any topic you would like to add to the CISO topic that was not mentioned yet? So the audience has also another question, and that is about what does a research consultant really do? And I know sometimes that, the titles are different from location to location. So I know Lisa mentioned research consultants is, what is the exact role?
I think that was sort of answered in the chat, that it implies more actually doing, actually involving, being involved in research. And I know our team many times are written into grants as statistician, or, to work with code, or to supervise grad students, or, different sorts of things. So I'm considering them more subject experts, and they work with everybody else that's faculty facing, but they're much more subject experts and likely to be on grants as a resource for researchers.
Yeah, I know the role, at least at Notre Dame, for example, has the title then computational scientist. It's this between, having their own research and be research consultants to bring that together. Yes. Any further comments to this topic? Okay, so then I would have another question. So what is the institution's view of a funding model that addresses the needs of the full spectrum of computing intensive, data intensive researchers, not just, the biggest consumers, but also the wide spectrum of needs that is, there, for example, with humanities, the different groups you are supporting. So, and I would give this to Jason.
Well, funding models. I've given lots of talks on funding models, and it's not a short response, but I'll try to be as brief as possible. So I would say that, probably the best advice that was ever given to me in terms of how you manage funding is you build for the 90%. You don't try to gild the lily. So we look at who our primary users are and what their primary tasks are and what they need to accomplish those goals, and we ensure that we can handle the majority of those with our cluster and our general HPC ecosystem. We have chosen to fund the cluster centrally as an ITS expense, understanding that it gets renewed every 4 to 5 years. We need a large refresh. We also work very closely, and I'm glossing over a bunch of stuff here. to try to be quick. But we also work very closely with new hires as they're developing their startup packages in case they have workflows that are going to be amenable to using our cluster or our other CI infrastructure in case they want to contribute funds to those, in which case we would support like a condo model where we would give priority access for some amount of time to whatever resources that they would purchase to add on to our cluster. But for the most part, we don't do any sort of chargebacks or billing because our just as a campus culture, we don't support that. That's just not something that we do as a smaller liberal arts college. We just don't have that kind of model that a lot of places have to have. So we try to be very open to what our users need and support it when we can. So we don't run into a lot of edge use cases, and if so, we will work with them to either adapt our current ecosystem to that, or if they need to purchase something very hyper specific for a research lab or to put in our co-location facility, we will work with them to do that. We will work with them as they're preparing grant applications so that they can fund their specific needs in that way. But I would just say, as a general approach, we look to handle at least 90% of our use cases through a centrally funded model, which has a replacement cycle of roughly every 4 years or so. And so that's kind of what we do.
Great, thanks. So, Savani.
UC Merced is an R2 institution with an ambitious goal to become a very high research classification R1 institute. So building research infrastructure is on top of our campus administration's goals. Over 20% of UC Merced faculty PIs use cert services, while majority of them use HPC. A few PIs obtain other cert services like research server co-location, research data storage. So our staff lines are funded through Central OIT. There are 3 primary sources of funding for our work at UC Merced. One is our funding model is pivoting to become more reliant on direct charging of usage of our facilities. So this has been a shift over the last few years, and which meant that my team had to develop and roll out recharge policy and go through recharge process that my team has been involved in developing and helping to deliver. Our previous funding relied so much on grants and other grant support for surveys, especially for hardware purchases. So this, what our previous funding model did was that we relied on Central IT or ORED to fund for any emergency or life cycle management of this hardware. And so we are now trying to pivot from this this model to more a self-reliant unit. What this allowed us, this pivot is allowing us to enable us think forward and serve not just our biggest HPC customers. So we are aware of secure research needs and data backup needs for our constituents, but at this point there are pipeline projects. These projects, they need support from campus administration and faculty partnership to actually materialize. So part of the role of CI facilitators is to educate our users on all these charging models and how to navigate between them. We want to make it as easy as possible for users, but at the same time, there are realities as to how a particular usage is funded and how researcher can take the maximum advantage of the resources that are being provided to them. So unlike many traditional systems administrator role, the research facilitator needs to carefully balance the technical and communication components of the nuances of this facilitation.
Great, thanks. A very different model also, but of course also growing. That is the other thing. It's all in the movement. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that is a typical thing, I think, in our environment, that it moves a lot and that different funding models has to be found. And so, yeah, Himanshu, what is your opinion?
So I think we are still trying to find a permanent funding model. We're still in that evolution. We had the fortune of talking to many schools when we were developing our plan, and I mean, no matter how many number of schools I talked to, no one had the same funding model. Every school seems to have done their own thing, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of. But yeah, I think broadly, we don't do chargebacks. We try to provide staffing time directly from the central leadership that is not on grants. We tried very hard to not go in that direction, because it's very hard to retain and recruit people. And I think, especially given the tight labor market that we are in now, and we know many of the skills that we need are the same skill that AWS and Azure needs the same skill, it's going to be pretty hard to compete if people know that they are on a termed contract, which is many of the grant funded positions are on. So I think we were fortunate, even when we were small, that we had assured lines of staffing, and that really helped. But when it comes to infrastructure, predominantly we run a condo cluster model. And that's where we provide some subsidy and some central infrastructure, and researchers provide the rest. That itself was a barrier, because not every researcher who is not from typical computationally intensive background like a humanist would have the funding or even know that they need HPC, which is, I think, a lot of topic that virtual residency gets into. So we ended up developing a baseline infrastructure to provide, and originally it was grant funded. Like Shravani said, you get grants to build infrastructure and open it up to the campus. But again, that is also a temporal solution. You may not get renewed next year. So we were fortunate, our leadership recognized the need to have a baseline infrastructure for all researchers. And we are now developing a new faculty recruitment program where to retain new faculty or attract new faculty, we will provide them certain baseline resources for no charge. And that comes directly funded from the university leadership. And when they need to actually start doing a lot more computation intensive work, that's where we redirect them to either condo cluster or national facilities like to Exceed or national labs. We have Argonne close by to see if you do some work that can be done on Argonne systems, or to cloud. Cloud is another player that we are putting people to. And even there are endless options. So CI facilitators to us are going to be critical, not just to optimize your code, but also just to find a home to run your computation, the most cost-effective home. That's another skill set that we see that CI facilitators would need to know, at least be aware what different options are. And there are thousands now.
So I'm very aware of the time. So we will have 7 minutes left. And since I would like to give every panelist still the chance to say some last sentence, something like a message. So yeah, the discussions were great. Thank you also the audience for the great questions. So if you would have a chance to change something like this at your institution, what would it be that you would find really helpful to improve the situation for the facilitators? And I just would go around with that question. And I know that was not a question on the list. I'm sorry, that was spontaneous. So I give it to Lisa.
We can handle spontaneity. It's all good. I actually would kind of cycle back my answer to the previous question, because the one thing for us would be funding, like continuous sustained funding for baseline research infrastructure. And at UCLA, we have historically operated on the principle of subsidiarity, where money was pushed out to the deans and divisions and schools, and research was supported as they felt fit. And in some cases that meant great facilities, lots of people. And in other cases, it meant everybody do what you can, you're on your own. And, trying to claw that back to provide at least baseline research infrastructure for everyone has been a challenge. So my request would be funding.
Okay, cool. Kurt?
So if I had to go back historically and change something, it would be the approach that we had to data science. So in the early 20-aughts, we started really doing a great job at building trust with the computational scientists. And we thought when the data scientists started coming that we already had the trust and that we could just keep doing the same thing. And that's not the case. So we need to make sure that our language, that our support, that the types of things that we're doing are driven not just by the computational scientists, but by the data scientists. And they have to know we're listening, and they have to trust that we're going to do the right things. And I think that's really the biggest challenge for our facilitation at this point, is that we're dealing with some distrusts with the data science community. And if we had started 5 or 10 years ago in the data science community, dealing with things a little bit differently, not being as smug about the fact that we had already built trust, I think we would be in a much better place.
Great, thank you. So Jason?
So the question is what we would change about our current approach if we could go back a little bit. Is that more or less what it is? We're still so relatively new at this, having just really done it intensively for about 2 years, although we've been kind of up and running for 3. We're still very much in a learning phase ourselves. I think what we're finding is we're laying the groundwork for what version 2.0 of our HPC offerings are going to look like. So we kind of took a shot in the dark with what we have currently on-prem right now, and I think we did a pretty good job of getting that right, given what we currently understand about our users' needs and how we work with them. But I think the big thing for us is, what is coming next. And so we are looking to that to try to understand the degree to which I think most of us are, like the degree to which are we still going to, like how large of an on-prem presence are we going to have? How much are we going to do in the cloud? How much are we going to rely on things like Exceed, Access, those kind of things? And really what needs to change in terms of how we do that. And so we're kind of in the midst of, I think, understanding and coming to terms with what we would do differently next time, which is about another year or 2 out from sort of serious planning and decision making. So I can't say that in retrospect we would change much, because I think we landed pretty good for our first offering. But there are certainly things that we're trying to improve moving forward.
Great, thanks. Himanshu?
Thank you. So I will say funding model, but in 2 contexts. I think at UIC, we have a funding model which is very much decentralized. A lot of the funds go out to individual colleges, and then mostly deans of these colleges, in our case 16 or 17 colleges, control all the funding. So the central administration and central facility like ours are usually become at the mercy of those individual deans, and then every college funding varies what they end up getting, and it becomes like a begging bowl. So our funding model has been a begging bowl strategy. We would take the rice bowl and ask for funds, and if we get it, we can build something. So I would hopefully see university leadership taking a serious look at, in general, the funding model, specifically the indirect cost recovery that gets distributed across colleges and departments and central facilities. So that's one ask. And second would be, if we could go in the past, we would look at our own funding model even before we start the facility. I think we have set in some expectation that university will keep on providing certain level of subsidy. We didn't clarify that it was only time limited, and eventually there is an expectation for facility to become close to self-sustainable. And it was not even very clear to us. So if we had those expectations clear from the central leadership, we could have set the right expectation among our users that in this round of funding, you are getting this much subsidy, but in the next round, you cannot assume that's the price you're going to pay next time. So.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Savani?
So what I would say is, from a central research computing facility vantage point, I see these niche, very specific requests for computation, data, network, training, and user support, software and tools. And yet the fact that my facility gets these niche requests is a very common thing. So it's on our team to identify the patterns and to identify the basic level of support that we can support research with. And for this, like Lisa and others mentioned, we need these institutional support in the sense of funding and resources. Because what I would like for to provide my team is to be able to focus on the researcher needs on the horizon. So if we are struggling for operations, then we cannot really think about like, okay, what's coming down the line, down the pipeline. That's a flexibility that I want to be providing my team. And for this to have a well-oiled funding system and baseline infrastructure is what I would want already working, but it's still work in progress, but I would want it like quite some time ago.
Great, thanks. And Kevin, yeah, we started with you in the panel and you have the last word.
And this is a really good question. Looking back, there are some things that when we started out in terms of research computing, and I wasn't there for the beginning when they first developed Research Computing Center here at SDSU, which kind of came in a few months later, is, two is, I think one is, in that we did address over time is being involved right away in their different consortiums that are out there, leveraging those, not only for yourself and your people. Funding is always a concern. And so what we've done is we really ramped up on the different opportunities for grant proposals and have been successful at some. So there again, like I said, as we move on, and the field of research cyber infrastructure is quite dynamic. It's changing all the time. And so how do you keep up with that? How do you keep your people educated? It'll continually to be a kind of a goal for us. And then two is, and for us, what we're doing, there's a new initiative here in the state of South Dakota. Us, along with the University of South Dakota, are going to provide HPC for the rest of the regional institutions in the state. And so we've got to look at how we do, research facilitation, and really, what we've been doing with Zoom kind of lends itself to the facilitation we're going to have to do with some of these remote sites. And obviously, we're going to have more site visits and things like that, because at times it's better to meet with the person across the table than through Zoom. But like I said, you get back to your original question, funding continually always is a concern. And I guess, a concern for us too is trying to keep up with what's coming around the corner. We didn't necessarily identify or recognize that about 6 or 7 years ago, and we all once didn't have enough resources and were scrambling with seed to address the researchers' need. And getting involved with Henry's grant proposal program, partnering with others, we were soon successful with an MRI grant, and that along with you got to have good people to make everything work. That along with the good people I have and the team I have has really helped us be successful for the university. So, like I said, I don't know if I answered your question, but like I said, for us is when we have problems, a lot of times you can't, you can try to solve those problems. You do what you can to try to influence if it's another decision maker. But, when it comes to funding and, getting your people up in terms of cyber infrastructure skills, be involved in these consortiums. And there's so much you can learn just talking with other people.
Thank you so much. So thank you again to all the panelists. This was a great discussion. Thank you to the audience for the great questions, for participating, for listening in. And Henry, do you have something to say for the next session, or I give it to you?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you all on the panel. I am constantly delighted by the wonderful sessions that we've been having this year and have had historically at the virtual residency. And I thank you all for a terrific panel today. I'm going to go ahead and turn off recording.